Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/slash Tales from Tech Support. In today's episode, the weather this weekend is going to be hot and humid. Is that burning smell normal? Every Friday at midnight the alarms went off, even when the building was empty. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. The weather this weekend is going to be hot and humid. I'm not sure where this tale belongs, but since it happened during my tech support days, it may as well go here. Also, my original submission was rejected due to content, so I've had to disguise some of the content of this post. So, if you can figure out what 890 plus 10 means when it is an area code in the United States, well, let's just pretend that's reserved for calling. This took place in the early 90s, and I was the head of a two-person computer department. The company was a boutique management consulting firm, with many of our clients being the middle management and C-suite executives for a considerable number of the Fortune 500 firms. We had a decent computer system setup in those days. A bevy of Macs for the graphics department making the presentation slides for the consultants, and 8 to 10 PCs in a dedicated room for number crunching. This was a few years before a Cat5 run to each desk was commonplace, so a central computer room was pretty much the norm for a professional services firm. While my primary responsibilities were for the PCs, and my number two, hereafter Mac dude, was responsible for the Macs, there was one system that was largely left to its own devices with minimal intervention: the AT&T Unix-based PBX in the phone closet. We had about 75 to 100 people in that location, and had acquired the system when moving into that space. I'm pretty sure it was leased, as that's how AT&T worked back then, but billing was never my strong suit, so I didn't pay much attention to such details. Whenever I got an email telling me an AT&T tech was coming in to perform an upgrade or some such, I'd meet them in reception and walk them over to the phone closet and let them do their thing. Once or twice we'd had some urgent issues, and I had called AT&T tech support, and they'd walked me through logging in at the console and checking some stuff, so at least I knew the customer admin password and could log in if needed. So one day I'm sitting at my desk, probably programming HyperCard to update the phone directory, when our comptroller guy, Compi, walks in holding that month's phone bill. "Hey Jack, do you know anything about the phone system? I know how to make a call and answer a call. What would you need beyond that?" "Funny. Can you tell me who made a specific phone call?" "Maybe. The PBX has a console, and I can probably figure something out. Let's go take a look." So, we wander over to the phone closet and I log in. I spend a few minutes exploring menus and eventually find the reporting system. It's actually pretty straightforward, and I take the number from Compi and enter it into the search field. Yeah, it looks like it was called about 12 times from these three extensions. Whose extensions are those? Let's see. Looks like conference rooms 6, 8, and 11. So there's no way to tell who called that number? Not unless there are video cameras that I don't know about. Okay. Thanks. Why are you asking? I can't tell you. Even as early as that in my career, I knew when not to pry. Okay, let me know if you need anything else. I think 2 or 3 months went by before Compi was back at my desk. "Hey Jack, can we go look at the call log again?" "Sure, which number this time?" "Same one and 2 others." He gave them to me and back we went. Looks like a total of 43 times in the past 3 months. Damn it. What the hell? I looked at Compi. Normally a pretty laid-back guy, he was genuinely upset. "What's going on?" "Let me go ask Dave if I can tell you." "I'll be right back." Dave was the president and one of 4 founders of the firm and my boss. If he was involved in making Compi keep it quiet, there was something serious going on. 5 minutes later, Compi comes back, closes us into the phone closet, and tells me to dial one of the numbers on speakerphone. Someone's calling, eh? We have a block on numbers. But it's not a number in the US, it's somewhere in the Caribbean. Compi shows me the phone bill. Sure enough, the call detail listed the various call destinations as being in Costa Rica, Honduras, and, if I recall correctly, the Dominican Republic. Huh. He's been doing it for 3 months now. And charging it to the firm? No, the calls are only for a minute, and that's how long their introduction is. It's the long-distance charges that are starting to pile up. Sure enough, the call detail log showed that all calls to a specific number were all the same duration, roughly a minute. Dave wants this person tracked down. Can you do it? Yeah, sure. Give me a bit to look up all the source extensions. But every single one was from a conference room, except for a few from Compi's line, obviously. This guy knew to cover his tracks reluctantly. I told Compi no luck. This went on for months. Every month Compi would bring me the new phone bill log, so that I could note the new numbers being used. The guy started out fairly modestly, compared to later, but as time went on, he seemed to get emboldened by his getting away with it. The calls became more frequent, and he got to the point where he would hang up and call the same multiple times in a row. I think his record was one number 15 times in a row. And there was no pattern to it, other than always being from a conference room phone. Not once did he slip up and call one of the numbers from his desk phone. Another thing that puzzled us was that there would be days where dozens of calls were made, but none on the next day or the day before. It seemed totally random. It took so long to find out who he was that we discovered that the PBX only stored a month or two of log data. Hard drives were expensive back then, so I had to figure out how to export the records to a floppy disk and save them on my computer. I used FileMaker Pro to store the data and later used it to analyze the records. After 9 months of this, Dave was not happy. One of the few times we discussed it, he told me his biggest concern. Jack, if I knew this was absolutely confined to calls made from this office, I'd be less concerned. But I am going to be pissed if this is a consultant and he's making these calls at the client. The last thing I need is a CEO asking me why my consultants are calling from his office. The days when there aren't any calls made here, I hadn't thought of that. That was the first thing that occurred to me when I saw those gaps. There was a reason he was the boss. Okay boss, we'll figure it out. And we did. Once the light bulb went off for how we would catch him. If he never called it from his desk, maybe we could tie him to calling a different number that no one else in the firm ever called. And that was how we caught him. One thing we knew about conference rooms is that they were in short supply, and it was not uncommon for calls to run over, and the next person/team to be knocking on the glass wall pointing at their watches to indicate to the occupants that their time slot was up, and they needed to vacate the room for the next team to use it. We actually watched and timed multiple times how long it took for a call to end and the people inside to pack up and leave and the next call to start. We settled on a maximum gap between calls of 8 seconds. Any longer than that, we couldn't assume the call was made by the same person. While this methodology certainly cast our net wider, all the numbers that we could positively tie to having been dialed by the same guy were either client main numbers or local businesses, etc., that were also called from many personal desk phones throughout the firm. We were beginning to think he would never slip up. But like all bad guys, he eventually did. I think it was a year after Compi first came to me that we hit pay dirt. 2 calls to a local with a message on the answering machine in the same month, one from a conference room tied to a call, and one from a personal desk line. Once we had a suspect, we knew what we had to do, as we had spent a good amount of time over the months brainstorming how to verify who the culprit was. I would try to visually verify that this guy was in a conference room while a call was being made. If I recall correctly, I could flag a number and have the system send a notification to me once a call to a specific number had ended. But I think I was limited to a set number of numbers to monitor, so I was guessing if he would stick to the current crop of numbers or being trying out new ones this month. I would get a notification, run to the phone closet, run the search to figure out the conference room, run to the conference room to see who was in there, and then run back to verify another was called during my running around. It took me a week to visually verify that it was the guy we thought it was. Mac Dude, a really laid-back guy and very non-confrontational, decided that he would try to prove innocence, because he didn't want it to become a witch hunt. He went to Compi and requested all the guy's timesheets, trying to see if any call was ever made while when the guy had in his timesheets that he was at a client. Ironically, this was the nail in the coffin for the guy. The timesheets and the call logs lined up perfectly. Not once was a line called when the guy was at the client. It turned out we both finished on the same day. We compared notes, agreed we were right, and went to Dave's office. "Hi Dave, thanks for seeing us on such short notice. We know who it is, it's GQ***. We can walk you through the proof if you want." "Are you absolutely sure?" "No question. It's GQ." "Okay, I'll handle it from here. Tell no one about this." And that was it. About 3 or 4 weeks later, that standard exit email went out from GQ. "Thanks for the memories and good luck in your future." It seemed that GQ had decided it was time to move on to greener pastures, and was taking a position with a different company in one of Boston's suburbs. But man, I wish I had been able to be a fly on the wall when Dave confronted GQ. As Dave was ex-military, it would have been an epic dressing down. God, I miss FileMaker Pro, what a great little personal database app. Why did I use GQ? This was also one of the big puzzlers to us. GQ was just that, a guy who could very well have been on the cover of GQ. Very attractive, one of the sharpest dressers I've ever known, French cuffs/cuff links and matching collar pin every day, the primary shirt color matching tie and pinstriping, the whole ensemble clearly from a high-end men's fashion shop, hair and beard meticulously maintained, a genuinely good guy who never treated the support staff badly. And he was literally married to a smoking hot, regionally known. Yet he was compelled, obsessively so, to call these lines. I haven't checked on him in years. I hope he found help and ended up in a good place. Is that burning smell normal? This happened back when desktop monitors were CRTs and LCDs were limited to laptops less than or equal to 13 because the corners were already exceeding the maximum viewing angle. A coworker and I were doing a lot of PC installs that quarter, and this was maybe the dozenth site we had done. Most of it was just physically removing the W98 era PCs, setting each user up with all new everything, install printers, and make sure they could log in. Simple stuff, on-site for less than an hour. We're at a smaller site, I think it had a whole 4 users that were getting new PCs that day, 2 in one room and 2 more in an adjacent. The first 2 were finished and users were back to work. We're in the next room working on the second pair when one of the user from the first room calls out to us. Like most of the users at these sites, she's an older woman who was likely a few years from retirement, also courteous and grateful for the new equipment. "User, is that burning smell normal?" she asked in a completely calm and innocent tone, as if with something like the desktop being a slightly different shade of blue. Both of us in unison, "No. No, burning smell is not normal." We can't see her or the computer, but we can smell it too. One of us goes for the fire extinguisher, and the other jumps back to the other room to see what we're dealing with. The new out-of-box compact monitor was faintly smoking from an internal high-voltage arc. Unplugging the thing was all it took to stop the incident. Since we had other sites to do that day, we had another monitor to swap with back in the truck. Supervisor Asshat wasn't too happy since instead of hitting the other sites, we came back to the main office early to get another monitor and leave the toasted one with him, and he had to update the asset tracking changes for both, then also had an RMA to deal with. For the rest of that PO batch, we started taking in extras, which was a good idea as we ended up with a few more DOAs in the following weeks. That final era of compacts before the HP buyout were garbage. Every Friday at midnight the alarms went off, even when the building was empty. Customer was furious. We'd installed a feature-rich mixed security system, integrated alarm, access and cameras, and every Friday like clockwork the system went crazy, and there was never anything wrong. After several weeks of this and more than one false 911 call, they were furious. I opted to head out the next day and visit them on Saturday morning. First thing I do is walk in and speak with the administrator for a while, since I'm early. She is busy compiling a bunch of fax receipts and reports from their big, industrial printer. She tells me that these reports are all spit out at midnight on Fridays. Heat-activated motion detector covering the foyer was picking up the hot paper and exhaust fans from the printer. I got up on a ladder and bent the detector mount a bit. It never false alarmed again.